Hello, 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 and welcome to the newest episode of Pop Culture Therapy. I'm Corellica Kane.
I'm Advent Nebula.
And this week we are going to be talking about something that really aggravated me because it's an issue in all of fandom, but it became prevalent last week with being a popular Twitter feed on...
And it was trending on Twitter for almost a week.
Yes, and it was on anime gatekeeping. So it gave me the thought about talking on gatekeeping in fandoms in general. So for anyone who doesn't know what gatekeeping it is...
And let me actually preference where this started. It's all because of a edgy, terrible series called Redo a Healer.
So gatekeeping is basically where fans of a specific genre or item say, if you only do this or if you only like this, you are not a fan of this medium of some sort. For example, let's use Doctor Who. If you have never seen Classic Who, you are not a true fan of Doctor Who. That is basically a pure example of gatekeeping, saying that you cannot be a fan if you don't know everything.
Hence why there's a lot of friction at Gallifrey 1 nowadays.
And the purpose of this is not just to talk bad about people who gatekeep, but also talk about the negative effects of gatekeeping.
It does keep people away from fandom or keeps them in the closet.
It does. And anime, sadly enough, is a perfect example, not just of this most recent tweet, but in general, because gatekeeping for anime has always been on both sides of the coin.
It's about 5 different sides, I say.
You do have a lot of different sides, but the two that I think are the most prevalent, and you can definitely chime in with others that I may not see, is you either are gatekept because you like anime. So there's the one of, well, if you like anime, then you're really a nerd and you can't be a part of A, which could be sports, B, could be Star Wars. You can only be an anime fan and you are gatekept from everything else. Or if you only watch Sailor Moon, Bleach, Dragon Ball, Naruto, mainly the mainstream anime, you are not a true anime fan.
And let's dive a little deeper into the sub ones. The split between the people who watch anything that's post, what I like to call the end of cell animation when it went clean, and the old school. You have the split divide between those two.
Oh yes, if you have never seen classic anime, you are not a true anime fan. Or if you've never seen modern anime, you are not a true anime. And we're using anime as an example because the post that was done by an influencer, I have never heard of him. I'm not going to name names because I don't think that's fair. If you really want to know more about it, it's on Twitter, it's on Reddit, it's on Google.
The Reddit thread started basically on the 12th of February. Mm-hmm. The Reddit thread is still going, just on this one tweet.
And this influencer basically said, as I used the example, he gave probably about 10 mainstream anime, like mainstream, Sailor Moon, DBZ.
Basically anything that aired on Cartoon Network or currently is like the big streaming titles.
Basically, it's the big titles that everybody wants to cosplay as.
Yeah.
And basically, if you only watch those, you are not an anime fan. And it really disappointed me because with any genre or with anything, somebody has to start somewhere. And we have all shown friends or family different anime series to get them in. I think I have shown Sailor Moon to like dozens of people of saying, if you actually are curious what I like to watch, here's an anime I've seen.
Bebop's the one I use.
Which is fair. We all have our go-to anime. But the ill effects... So some of the ill effects that come from gatekeeping, one of them is if you don't bring in new audiences, the interest will die out because you only have so many people interested in it, and nothing new will be created.
Yeah, that said influencer started that post because of people complaining about Redo a Healer. I tried reading the manga. I tried watching the first episode. I like edgy crap. I couldn't even stomach this.
And a lot of people complained about it. And his argument was, well, if you only like these set series, then you're not a fan. That's not fair. Because Gundam is a great example.
And that's probably one of the most gate-kept series of all of anime.
Of all of anime, yes, because you have so many iterations. But if you didn't bring in new audiences...
people wouldn't go back and check out the classic.
No, we would still be in Universal Century.
Which we're, funny enough, harkening back on that with another stuff.
Yes, but we've had so many years of evolution where when we can go back to Universal Century, it could be good again.
Yeah.
Because how much do we need of Char?
Yeah, they took a good long break between Turn A and having then come out Unicorn. There was a long break.
And Turn A was a spiritual connector. It wasn't an official connector to the UC.
Until they decided to actually put in Reconquista in G.
But I will say, Gundam as an example, you had the first 3 series. They were great. They brought in new audiences. Now let's fast forward to Wing. Everybody watched Wing
because it was the first time a Gundam series would actually come over to the States officially, not through fan subbed VHSs.
Exactly. So that's if you look at that as like the starting point for American Gundam love. Yes, there was Gundam before that in America.
There was Gundam love thanks to the VHS, but let's ignore that because those were the gatekeeping fans.
Yes and no, because Gundam Wing lovers are gatekeeping fans in and of themselves.
Because they acknowledge that's the only thing.
Yes. But where I'm coming with it is Gundam Wing did a whole new style that Americans did not know. They loved it because of their loving it. We got G Gundam in the States immediately thereafter. After G Gundam came to the States, because it was 2 very different polar opposite series, they started bringing more of the Universal Century in.
And they decided to do Stardust Memory and 8th MS Team before they actually decided to air the original series.
And the downside of Gundam, which this is why I bring it up as a gatekeeping example, is we still have 2 UC series that have never been brought to the United States fully. We have Zeta Gundam was brought to the US, poorly dubbed, but not the subtitled version.
Until Rightstuf decided to release that current Blu-ray set.
But Double Zeta
took until Rightstuf recently released it. It still has some issues.
And Kaiju and I actually paid for the $500 version because that's the only way we could get actual good subtitles. So you have one series that purists are going to say is the greatest series from the original, and then the Gundam Wingers are going to say, well, it can't be that great if it was never brought to the United States. Because you also have the same thing with Seeds. So gatekeeping, the negative effect of it is if you gatekeep your series too much, you are not going to get new stuff.
Sword Art Online has probably become the modern equivalent of a gatekept series.
Yes, because the lovers of Sword Art stick with it, and they are ride or die.
Where the critics of the series that point out the terrible writing, like myself, get blasted.
And that's a flip side of gatekeeping, is you still have enough of a fan base to make it justified. Another example of the positive of not doing gatekeeping is Big O. Big O was not a gate-kept series. Big O was extremely popular in the United States. So popular that the series was rescued from being canceled in Japan, and a second season was developed.
It was in development hell for several years before it got off the ground, but it was America that saved it.
It was America who saved the day, not because it was gate-kept, but because all of the fans said, oh my God, this is a good series. You need to watch Big O. Just like with Cowboy Bebop. You need to watch Cowboy Bebop. You need to watch Ghost in the Shell. So many fans said, if you like this series of anime, watch this series.
Or, if you like this genre of entertainment, give this a try.
Exactly. That is what you want to do. You don't want to insulate and say, well, if you only like this, you're not actually a fan. Because there are different types of fans. So this is the second thing that the negative effects of gatekeeping do. It alienates casual fans.
Which, a good example of what's going on right now that's not from the anime. The Harry Potter fandom right now with this.
So this is a good example because it's actually the author that's at fault for gatekeeping to even happen. So within any fandom, you have casual fans, and then hardcore fans. And the hardcore fans are what I mentioned for Sword Art. They're the ride or dies. They are gonna stick with the series up, down, all around. One Piece is a good example of a ride or die series.
Yeah.
Because you either love it,
or you can't stand it because of the pacing.
Yes. Because casuals will enjoy One Piece because of the storytelling, but it's the hardcore ride or die fans that are going to stick with it to the end. Harry Potter, gatekeeping was horrible with that series, I would say from when the fourth book came out and then the movies were coming up.
And then now, thanks to J.K. Rowling's lovely Twitter threads from last year, the hardcore gatekeepers got just unbearable.
So, gatekeeping for this series started, I would say, probably 2000. Because when the movie started to come out for the adaptation of the books, and sadly, I will say, I was guilty of it a little bit, and I had to come back on myself for it. Anytime you watch a movie that's based off a book or a manga or a graphic novel, or anything, you have to be aware it cannot be adapted word for word, page for page.
That's where Marvel and Disney did the smart thing. They took the concepts but did their own thing.
Absolutely. There is no way you can adapt something page for page. And if you do adapt something page for page, it turns out to be 4 hours and you're bored as hell. Thank you, Watchmen. Just had to get that out there. But
I'm glaring at you right now.
I liked Watchmen, but that was a page-for-page adaptation, and it was long. But with that said, Harry Potter fans, once again, I was a little guilty at the start, came out in droves and said, these books are the only way you can watch it. If you watch the movies, you are not a Harry Potter fan. And that was a slap in the face for any new audiences because kaiju is a perfect example of, well, why am I going to go out for the books if I'm going to be consistently told I'm not a fan?
Yeah.
Why am I even going to continue watching the movies then? And I kind of feel that gatekeeping book fans are what really prohibited the movies from becoming as good as they could have been.
Yeah.
Because the fans of the books kept on saying, well, you're never going to make it as good. You're never going to do what we want. So why were they going to try?
Yeah, they weren't going to try. And then modern day with everything, it's like, and you're riding or dying the author as she's set herself into oblivion.
Well, and then you had the gatekeeping fans of Harry Potter also. And this is where I think it's a detriment because people refuse to look at the final epilogue chapter of the last book. They don't like the ending, so they refuse to acknowledge it exists. And gatekeeping fans also do that because it's not fair. You have casual who are going to enjoy it for what it is. A regular fan, once again, who is going to enjoy it for what it is. And then the ride or dies who either it has to meet their perception or they're going to make it meet their perception. And then the other side of ride or dies are they're going to ignore every single bad thing and say the person who created it had no fault. That no matter what they say online, that they're still a good person. They can say whatever they want about trans rights or whatever they don't agree about trans rights. It's okay.
And on the flip side, Marilyn Manson, nobody's gatekeeping him at all. Everybody was like, well, we're not surprised.
Oh, no, I was never surprised. I read his book. But the reason for that is you have to acknowledge... Long story short, you have to acknowledge there's different types of fans. There is no such thing as every fandom having only hardcore fans. If there were, we would never have anything.
Yeah.
Because hardcore fans would only love a certain set, and that would be it.
Yeah. And now I'm going to go into the one part of gatekeeping, and this is not just for anime, but it's basically anything that comes over from a foreign language to America. People complain about localization.
Oh, I forgot about that gatekeeping. Yes, you're right.
Which was a big part of this same thread.
And this
is where I would have gotten banned.
So this is actually this is a huge negative effect, and thank you for bringing it up. Localization
does not mean censorship, people. Stop that.
Localization means that they're translating it for local audiences. And to be fair, and then I have to say this so much, there are people who watch anime who have a hard time reading.
Yeah.
There are people who watch anime who don't want to have to read as they watch.
There are also people who are not going to get the cultural differences on a joke. You have to change it to meet the local types of dialects or dialogue or any kind of... God, I can't think of a word I'm trying to go with.
No, it's fair though, because... So... This is the other problem with gatekeeping. When you have localization, it's like you said, it doesn't mean censorship. It does not mean they're actually changing the premise of the story. It does not even mean they're changing word for word from the script.
They're basically finding something that's going to be the equivalent in the English language.
Because if you also think about it, you have to have localization for it to be able to come over to another country and either air on television or be able to be sold in certain platforms. Yeah. Yes, a lot of anime can come over to the States and still maintain their original language and just have subtitles. But you are alienating a huge market by just saying we only want our anime in Japanese voice language only with subtitles.
And the same thing is happening with the game industry when stuff comes over. It's like, well, you're not going to dub it. It's like, do you realize that 2/3 of the American gaming population wants to play it in English? They don't want to deal with subtitles in a foreign language. You got to keep that in mind.
You really do. And this is a gatekeeping issue for animation, for, like you said, anything that comes over foreign language. I am not saying that I like live action movies dubbed over in English. I can honestly say I prefer not to watch them. But I do know
there is a good, and you can check metrics on Hulu because Netflix doesn't release theirs. There are a lot of people on Hulu who watch an English dubbed foreign movie, wherever it's from.
And there's many reasons. So, and this does not look at casual fan versus hardcore fan. This actually looks at how people can understand. Because let's use anyone who is dyslexic as an example. If someone is dyslexic, they already naturally have a hard time reading. Are we going to make it where they cannot enjoy a form of entertainment because the prerequisite is you have to be able to read? And this is not to say anyone who's dyslexic cannot read. I have family members who are dyslexic. And dyslexia means that they flip letters.
And they're going to have a hard time comprehending with subtitles because those can go by so quick.
Yes.
And people have a hard time with reading comprehension where they can't read fast. Subtitles is not a way for them to go.
No, if you have any kind of reading comprehension issues, subtitles do not work because they move, like you said, too fast because the Japanese language speaks quick enough.
And I have forms of entertainment that come from other countries I really enjoy. Russian is one of the slowest languages you can get by with on subtitles, but I enjoy Vietnamese entertainment. I enjoy Taiwanese entertainment. I enjoy Japanese entertainment.
Same here.
And then when you go into Europe, I enjoy German and Swedish. German and Swedish are two of the fastest languages on the planet as well.
Yes, they are. And like you said, it's not just Japan. The only reason we're looking at Japan is because of the anime aspect.
Spanish entertainment is probably... because Spanish is the fastest spoken language on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody that's trying to watch something, if it's something from a Hispanic region or any kind of country that speaks Spanish or predominant language, more than likely an American casual fan of entertainment is going to watch it with an English dub because Spanish goes by too fast.
And while you may not, as a fan, as a hardcore fan, let's just put it like that, you may not agree with them having dub tracks. I know Kaiju doesn't agree with certain things having dub tracks, but he recognizes it's a necessity. And that's really what it is. And the other reason to have dub tracks, actually, let's look at Totally Spies. Totally Spies is not an American cartoon.
It's French.
Yes, it's a foreign cartoon, and they wanted to air on television.
They had to change the script and the localization so heavily because it was aired as a kids show here. It was a show marketed to older teens in France.
And even the original version is super awesome. But if you want to buy a license for a property and have it air in another country, you have to localize it because you can't get away with it any other way.
No, almost always you can find, because the original Winx Club, which is another foreign show from Italy, localized, but it was still an all-ages show. All it really did was just change some names and then a few things that wouldn't fly here in the U.S. based on the way the broadcast guidelines are.
Well, exactly. And so by gatekeeping and saying that you cannot localize, you are limiting what people can see. And let's say you do. Let's say Gatekeepers won with localization, and you limit how much is going to be localized. You would not have half the series because the American companies, using them as the example because we're in the US, they're going to say, well, why am I going to buy foreign properties if nobody is going to watch it localized? Then you won't have the entertainment. And if you use the example of, well, I can pirate it, more and more companies are finding a way to pirate-proof their shows.
Yep, you can see it. They're using the game industry's approach, which has been tackling piracy since that's been a problem since the 90s. You'll have broken links. You'll have content that'll scratch. You'll end up not being able to use the whole product when you try to pirate it. They're finding the very creative ways that it's been done for years from the PC gaming industry.
And so piracy, while it's still going to exist, and yes, there's always going to be ways around it. I'm not saying that piracy is going to disappear, but with the advent of more companies doing things digitally, it is harder and harder to break those hacks on those digital platforms to download and to then share it publicly.
Or they'll release a pirate version when it's a version they're throwing out there purposely that's going to be corrupted, so you can't try and find the actual pirated versions. They're trying to make it harder to find the illegitimate versions where they've released their booby-trapped version. PC games have been doing this for years.
So you have to give in to localization. It does, because even with localization, anime industry is a great example of it. They share out still the original content.
Yeah.
You still have the ability to watch it. And not everything is going to be localized. Sentai Filmworks is a great example of a company that they will buy properties that just wouldn't sell for localization that's going to be only for hardcore anime fans. Same thing with gamers. Example is the Yakuza series. It is not localized.
Until 7. 7 was the first time they did a localization.
Well, they did it for Kiwami 1 and 2, but they never, when they did the remaster.
No, you're talking about the original.
The original, yes.
The ones that were on the PlayStation 2.
Yes, but for the newer versions, they have not. So they're all in Japanese. So the barrier to entry for those particular fans is they have to be comfortable knowing that they're going to be reading the entire time. And if that's not what they're interested in, then that's fine. But you have to allow for some level of localization. Otherwise, nothing new is going to come out. Yeah. And you're going to be complaining about all the American cartoons that already suck.
Yeah. And you're going to be complaining about any of the British shows that have been coming over recently.
That suck.
Yeah.
So the last section I have for gatekeeping that is really a problem in my opinion is the bullying. When you have gatekeeping of any sort in any fandom,
Vic Mignogna fans,
very good example, you have bullying that is in connection to it. You may not be thinking when you post your comments, like this Twitter post did, of saying, this is your buried entry. If you only like this laundry list of shows, you're not an anime fan. That's a form of bullying, because you're basically telling people that they don't count, that their opinion does not count if they only are a casual fan and this is all they like. The other problem with it is it doesn't exist solely on Twitter. You have it on Reddit, you have it on Facebook, and you also have it back in the good old days of anime conventions. Anime conventions, as much as I love them, they are a cesspool for gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Actually, any convention of any sort is a cesspool of gatekeeping. I love conventions. I will still continue to support and go to conventions, but I will fight for the rights of everyone at those conventions, because gatekeeping harkens to bullying, and not just for the people that the gatekeepers are talking to. Basically, gatekeepers are bullying those casual fans or just the regular fans, saying you can't like certain things. It flips on the other side by the gatekeepers also being bullied. While I will admit, the gentleman who posted on Twitter, he had very stupid things to say, and some of his responses were racist, were misogynistic. They were terrible.
And let's even continue on that. I've noticed a lot of the male anime community has done some of the most misogynistic gatekeepers that I have ever seen.
Oh, yes, because if it doesn't have fan service, it's not a series you should watch. But bowling...
I like myself some fan service, but I'm not like those assholes.
At the same time, fan service is good as long as it has a story. But bowling is what I think is the worst of it all. Because the initial comment is a bullying comment against anyone for what they like.
And his comment is basically what's known in the community is, let's keep the normies away.
Yes, and that's a fandom issue. You have nerds and you have normies. And it's not fair because anyone is allowed to be a fan of anything.
Which is what I think has kept a lot of people out of the Star Trek fandom.
Absolutely. Star Trek, Star Wars, those are two of the worst when it comes to the normies versus nerds and the bullying. Yes, I make a comment about conventions, but their conventions...
We've done episodes just dedicated to Star Wars.
It's Star Wars and Star Trek, they are a big believer if you... Here's a great example. If you have not watched the original Star Trek series, you are not a true fan of Star Trek.
Or with Star Wars, if you didn't watch the original trilogy before anything else, you're not a Star Wars fan.
Exactly. And I know I've been told that for Star Wars specifically, that because I had not watched the Star Wars movies growing up, I wasn't a true fan. Because I didn't live my childhood in the light of Darth Vader. And I think that's completely unfair because, and not to myself, but to anyone, bullying of any sort when it comes to pop culture is unnecessary. And most of the people, to be fair, most of the people who gravitate towards those fandoms of any sort are bullied naturally.
Yeah.
Because they're nerds or they don't fit in. And they finally have a home that they fit into. And we're going to, as a fandom, gatekeep and bully them and say, well, because you don't like what I like, you're not a fan.
Yeah, and this circles back to where we started. Doctor Who. With the old versus the new.
I know it. Everything is going full circle with our podcasts. So, yes, full circle. You have Doctor Who. It takes in account of all of the areas of the negative effects of gatekeeping. And I think Chris Chibnall, as much as I don't like him as a director, if I look at it on a gatekeeping aspect...
Well, not just a director, but as a writer, too.
As a writer, he is feeling the effects of gatekeeping because he is being told... I'm not justifying anything because I think the most recent Doctor Who seasons have been terrible. But to look at it from an outside perspective, if you're constantly told that... you have to fit into the classic. You have to fit into the classic.
Or you're not doing it like Davies did when, where, for me, the first two seasons of Davies were fairly weak compared to the rest of his run.
Or if you're not doing it like Moffat did. And that's another form of gatekeeping. Yeah. That's the bullying aspect. Bullying doesn't mean you're doing it maliciously. Bullying means you're saying you're not doing it the way that A did it or B did it. You're telling someone, well, because you're not doing it this way. You may not enjoy something. You may not like the fact that there's 1,000 episodes of One Piece because of how much popularity there is. You may not like the fact that Star Wars keeps on having trilogies after trilogies. That doesn't give anyone the right to gatekeep and say no one else is able to come in and either try something new, enjoy the same thing that you enjoy, or enjoy other things within the same genre just because it's not your thing. Because we all have to start somewhere, and we all enjoy something. And using anime as an example, I can guarantee you every single series on that list that he brought out, I have watched and I will still continue to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's called a gateway
Yes.
in. You're not supposed to stand at the gate and keep people out.
No. That's what the Bible's for. Sorry, I had to say it because pearly gates.
Yeah.
But,
Well, Solomon Kane much?
exactly.
Yeah. I think we've pretty much hit about everything we can really get into this without really doing a deeper dive into a specific topic.
I agree. So, everyone, please share this, or please remind your friends or anyone who talks about, well, you can't be this if you don't like this. Gatekeeping is unfair. Just like what you like, and if you have other people who like what you like, talk to them about it. And maybe they'll have other series that you can watch or other genres you can watch. The same thing. You may have things that they don't know about.
And with that, we're going to wrap up. But the next episode we're going into is one that seems to infuriate people online. The two of us really could give a shit.
I know, but it's so impassionate.
And it turns me into Mr. Shitposter online because of this.
It does. And it's called spoiler culture. So we'll check you out soon. Bye!